quick question.
Yeah,
Now, when it comes to acquisition, just really quick, because a lot
yeah,
of people are entrepreneurial minded and they'll
sure.
ask this, is what are important things to look for when building a company for acquisition?
Yeah. Well, I think you know what
Mhm.
your mission when you're building a company is to create the greatest amount of value. And I don't think you're really necessarily thinking you should know targets that are going to take you out,
Sure.
but you should always be a little bit reluctant to give it up if you want the best price.
Yeah.
And I think that the truth is, from an acquisition perspective, I just knew that we would be, I like to build things. And I think there's, founder CEOs, and I think there's forever CEOs.
Right.
And I'm a founder CEO. I like to
Mhm.
get it started, I get it to a place. And then at some point, you've created a place where the bigger company can come in and just sort of plug and play
Mhm.
into their bigger system.
Mhm.
So that's what happened for me. Wrote, we had like created the rocket, if you
Mhm.
will, ride, and now they could take it and then take it to the next level.
Beautiful. Now, was that self awareness something you discovered while in Slate, or was
Mm,
it something that you kind of knew in advance when you started? The reason I ask is because I used to work for Rob Dyrdek at the Fantasy Factory,
yeah,
and Rob would always tell us never start a company without having an exit
yeah,
strategy
sure,
in
I
mind
agree with that.
or options with that,
Yeah,
because you could find yourself, to the point where maybe your goal is to do X amount in revenue. Obviously, you want
sure,
to help people, but there's
yeah.
the financial element. You get there and you go, oh shit,
Hmm.
now do I want to run this? Do I want right?
Oh
You
yeah.
might have success, but be confused. Did you run
Hmm.
into any of that, or what was your
Oh,
experience
I
with
think
that?
I'm a built to sell kind of girl. Like
Mhm.
I think that you do create. I don't. My ambition was never to build a company that my children would. I don't
Right, to
have
pass
children,
on
but
forever.
if
Yeah,
I
yeah,
had
yeah.
children, my nieces and nephews, as I should
Yeah.
say, would work in. That was never the ambition
Mhm.
because I think I'm wired for that
What's next?
curiosity
What's
of
next? Yeah.
something. So I never imagined that path. I
Mhm.
imagined that I would get it to a place and I would make it so attractive that somebody would want to come and take it, and I'd
Mhm.
be a little sad to give it up actually at that
Yeah.
moment because by that time it's like smooth sailing, right?
Right,
You
totally.
kind
Yeah, yeah,
of,
yeah.
but it really, I think it was a higher calling, if you will, to
Mhm.
go on and do Sprout.
Makes sense. Plus a couple million reasons doesn't hurt
That's
to
right, doesn't.
persuade the situation.
That's
Okay, so you
true.
start Sprout literally the next day.
I did.
And the intention is what exactly for people watching? What was your intent to help women with specifically?
So, when I started Sprout, it was this tiny little group of us that were going to set out to change the conversation about women and sex forever. And that was what we were going to do. We were going to break through with the first ever FDA approved treatment for women's sexual desire.
Meaning women who might not have sexual desire and
Yep.
want to like up it like the same way men might
So
have the issue with Viagra.
totally. So
Mhm.
so the difference is, Viagra is blood flow issue,
Mhm.
a mechanical issue. For women, we learned over time scientifically, it's in the brain. And for 10% of women, at some point, there's a brain chemistry imbalance that doesn't let them respond to sexual cues like they used to. And
Mm.
you can see it as clear as day
So it's something
in
you
brain
can
scan
visually
imaging.
measure.
You can. Insurance will never put us all in a PET
Sure.
scan or a functional MRI. So there's a validated like screener that's used in the space. But that's really was an aha moment for me is that study after study after study put women who reported this condition, it's called HSDD, hypoactive or low sexual desire
Mhm.
disorder. So they would put them in a PET scan. They'd put a woman with, normal desire. She's happy with it. Nobody's on all of the time,
Mhm.
right?
Sure.
Expose them to sexual cues. Brains light up totally differently. And
Wow.
what we learned is that, your brain sort of shuts off for you to have sex. It
Mhm.
quiets. And I think there's really type A women, really like sort of information processing center of the brain keeps going and they're lying in bed and doing their to-do list and everything else.
Sure, yeah.
And actually they never connect to those sexual cues and they've lost things like fantasies and that basic, we're all wired with drive
Mhm.
biologically.
Sure.
And so for women, it can, something can disrupt that. And it's
Mhm.
not insignificant. 10% of women, it's got the same prevalence as ED does for men.
ED meaning erectile dysfunction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for men.
Now, if that's the research and you found that research, why do you think big pharma companies were not listening to that research? I mean, if anything, you would think that they would jump on the opportunity.
Sure.
People would be jumping on it. Why do you think it was a taboo in the industry? Like, what was your pulse on it? Being that and we'll get into the roller coaster of how you actually had to
Yeah.
get it through. But what was the stigma? What was it that was keeping people from capitalizing on this opportunity to help women in that
So
space?
I think the dirty little secret of healthcare is that while a big company may recognize the commercial potential, they know the path will be longer and the hurdles will be higher. And that's a really unfortunate truth in women's health. And oh my God, Now it's women's sexual health, and everybody's running for the door.
Yeah.
And, really, it was truly not that we couldn't, it's not that science had given us the answer a long time ago. It's that we have such deeply held beliefs when it comes to female sexuality, even as a society at large, and there's such a societal narrative, it's really hard to get people out of their own way.
Totally.
My parents say to me all the time, like, could you have not done a drug in diabetes? And that's
why is it always sex, Cindy?
I know. They're like, come on. And it's so true, because if you're not diabetic, you don't have a point of view about it. But by God, everybody has a point of view when it comes to sex.
True.
And so it was really interesting to actually break through that and have people just pay attention to the data.
So up front, were there other companies that you had researched that had tried to do this and
Yes,
failed?
sure.
So
Oh my God, are you kidding? We tried to pretend that Viagra would work for women, and I could have saved them millions of dollars to say, it's not a blood flow issue, it's in the brain.
Yeah.
Right? It's not.
Totally,
it's not on demand. But no, companies had tried. They had gone forward, but the science had really progressed so significantly in terms of our understanding. And to me, it was the black and white of the brain scans that was the call to action.
Do you found that was what gave you the reassurance? Because I'm sure there were points where, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure there was points where maybe you had so much doubt from others that you started to question your own self. Did you run into that at all, or not really?
I don't think I had no question on the science. I don't mean to say it's not there. It wasn't steel. There were many days, I promise you, I took to the bed and had to cry it out because people were pretty vicious when it came to this. The kind of letters I got, security that would follow me at FDA meetings, and it was really very loaded. But what I knew to my core is two things. I knew the data, and we had extraordinary scientific data in over 13,000 women, and I was proud of that because it's the largest new drug application for women.
Wow, 13,000?
13,000. Just as context, so the average new drug approval in the U.S. is a little under 1,000 patients. We had 13,000.
That's all that's needed, 1,000. And you guys, 13,000.
13,000. And then the other piece of it is I knew that I talked to women who had it. And I think that was what was so missing, is just, how radical an idea. Just why don't you go listen to the people affected by it?
The human touch.
Who should be at the center of the conversation other than the people who are affected? Whatever it is, whatever condition it is, the patients are who we should be listening to. And when I spent a year, inside a Slate, when I got this, I spent a year just talking to women who had this before I sprouted out of it. And and in that year, as I listened to them, I thought, well, if I'm going to listen to them, by God, so too is the FDA going to listen to them.
And other people hadn't tried that, or what was wrong about or what was not wrong? What was ineffective about the strategies of other people who had tried to do similar things to what you had done?
I think that they didn't put the patient at the center, and I think that's a little bit of where pharma's lost its way, is that they've lost what they're there to do, which is to serve a patient need. And for me, in going in front of the FDA, I think that just I'm going to go back to my set. 26 for men, nothing for women. Something is wrong with that equation, and we probably didn't have equal consideration in terms of the value for women's sexual health.
So when you say 26, you mean 26 types of medications
for men, and not a single one for women. And you don't, you don't have to think about that too long or too hard to know that something is wrong with that math, and that probably it's indicative of value judgment. And that we think that is really important for men, and women will be okay. And that just didn't stand for me. I think I've been fueled by injustices my whole life. If something's not right, you got to do something about it. You can't just sit idly by or you're part of the problem. You've accepted it.
I love that.
If you guys enjoyed that video, be sure to hit that subscribe button right now, because every week we bring you the very best in personal development content, interviews, and insights to help inspire you to take your life and your dreams and make them a reality. And also, if you want to know how to book dream guests the same way I have, you can check the link below for my top 3 secrets. So if you have a podcast or a show or whatever it is and you want to collaborate with them, if you click that link below, I'll give you those top 3 secrets to help you get in touch with anybody. And also, don't forget that The Passionate Few is available on media platforms as well. notes. You can subscribe to the podcast. And until next time, thank you for being one of the passionate few.